Gentlemen.
Yes.
Hello.
Boys. We are live.
Gents, how are we? We are so live. We are almost dead.
Is that how live we are?
We're post live.
We're post live. Okay. All right.
How are we? This is a very special night.
It is. First of all, it's the start of a couple of major holidays, right?
Mm-hmm. Big weekend. Big weekend coming up. Big weekend
for those that care.
For those that care. And it's usually a good drinking weekend. Correct?
Yes. Is it ever a bad one?
Because you'll be with family. Lots of family. That brings out the booze.
I got you. I got you. So listen, before we start our usual jibber jabber, shall we roll our little quick intro?
Sure.
Let's go. Let's get it rolling, boys.
Let's get our little intro going. Where is our little intro? Where'd it go? Oh, there it is.
Who's dancing?
Welcome to the merch table.
Cheers.
Salud. Oh, cheers.
Oh, cheers.
Salud. Sir.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Slunch. A caipirinha.
Like Martinelli, as you said, with a kick.
We do a little swirl.
Or zat. Appetizer? Appetizer. That makes me sad, but you know what makes me happy? Whiskey.
Cacao.
It's everything I thought it would be and less smelly.
Every time.
We are back.
What? It gets you every time? Does it get you? Where's it get you? Where's it get you?
Right here.
Right here? Right here?
Where we
down 911?
We are live. BoozeDancing TV is live on. Where are we live? We're live on YouTube. We're live on
Facebook,
Twitter,
the Twitter,
and we're pre-Elon Musk Twitter, right? We're not. This is the pre-Elon Musk. Twitter.
Not quite there yet.
We're almost there.
Once he finds out about us, he's going to up his offer. He's going to jack that offer right up once he finds out.
Maybe by the end of the show, we could be on a whole different,
absolutely
thing, different portal. We are together again. We haven't been together live for a long time.
Yeah. No, it's been a while.
This is kind of a double header. We're doing two things. We're doing a live broadcast, and this will come out as a podcast in the not so distant future.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Correct.
All right. So we doing good, guys? We're doing good with the pre-holiday talk and pre-holiday drinking. We're all ready for the weekend. We're all ready to yap about some cocktails.
Sure. This is the pre-holiday drinking.
Kind of is. It is.
It's
Right.
not kind
Thursday.
of.
The holiday starts
It
tomorrow.
is. Be definitive.
Right.
It's a nice lead-in.
Tomorrow's Good Friday. I call this Good Thursday.
There you go.
And I had a lot of choices in here to find something to drink.
You had a lot of choices.
It worked out really well.
So wait, let's not jump ahead here. So that's Booze and Vinyl 2.
Yes.
And our very special guest is?
Our very special guest tonight is André Darlington. And he was is a guest of the show before, and author and cocktail specialist and man about town and world traveler. And he's got a new book out, and we're going to be chatting with him tonight and talking cocktails and music. And maybe a little TV too. Just maybe a little bit of TV. We're going to roll this into a multiverse kind of event. And we'll roll this into the what we watch, what we drink.
Into the multiverse.
The multiverse.
You don't want an alternate reality me, is all I'm saying.
We're so meta. We're beyond meta.
We're post-meta. All right. Shall we roll the video and then we'll bring it out?
Let's roll the video and bring it out.
All right. Let's bring it. Let's do it. Hang on here. All right. André!
Wow. André Darlington is live with us tonight. Hey,
I'm mesmerized by your wonderful video of photos I recognize.
Yes. That last one with the Italian playing cards?
Excuse me?
The last photo.
Yes.
That had I don't know what the drink was, but then I saw the Italian playing cards. I had to include that.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
had to.
No,
it takes me back.
For having me on. That was an amazing intro. You guys really are beyond meta. This is the multiverse.
We are
The
we are
multiverse.
multi-metaverse. Right.
You're animating books. It's conceptual, guys.
We
We
are
try,
the kings
man.
of all media.
Kings of all media. Howard Sherman
I've
has
been,
something to say about that.
I've been told repeatedly that I'm still the beta testing. That I'm not out of beta yet.
You're a little
Andre,
soft boiled.
welcome.
Thank you for having me on. It feels like a very long time since we've been together. I guess it was over a year, right? I think
the last time we were on was with Your Spirits.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Sure.
Where we did some cocktails with
That was like
Martin.
a winter ago, wasn't it? Was it a fall?
It feels
ago?
like it. I think it was like
The
in the
last-
spring.
2+ years is a blur.
Yeah.
It's a blur.
Yeah.
Well, you were still in Philly at the time.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to be back on, chatting with you guys. I'm glad to see that everything is well. Everyone looks healthy. We're all alive under our.
We're all live.
Under
We're
our
gonna be better soon.
Noir, sorry, apologize for my noir lighting here.
Oh, yeah, we're the kings of bad lighting, so that's no problem.
I fit right in.
I come with my own spotlight.
So well, before we get to the book, what have you been doing since we talked to you last? I mean, just working on the book or
I've been
moving?
working my butt off, I guess. Yeah. So Booze and Vinyl is coming out next week, along with the game. But in addition to that, I have 2 other books coming out this year, so I'm having a crazy year.
Holy moly.
I have a John Wayne cocktail book that's coming out in September. And
Wow.
then I have a book called Bar Menu, which is kind of a global booze food book, kind of a follow-up to Booze, Booze Cruise.
Right.
I'm super excited about Bar Menu. It's my first. I've been in the industry a long time, and I started out as a restaurant reviewer, and Bar Menu is my first cookbook. So I'm super excited about that. But obviously, I've been, buried in developing a tour for Booze and Vinyl, which has been pretty funny because, last time I talked to you guys, we were in the middle of a pandemic, and I was, about to go out basically on tour for Booze Cruise, and then everything shut down, and I just never really made it. I made it to Pittsburgh. I did a little thing in Philly. I did a little thing in New York, maybe a little DC, and then a little bit in the Midwest, and then it was over. And Dallas.
Did you just do a lot of Zoom stuff kind of thing?
Yes. So we Zoomed Zoomed like crazy. But, a lot of the bookstores all wanted to do a Zoom, but it turns out that nationally, we're all pulling from the same pool. So you can Zoom for a bookstore in Chicago, but back in the pandemic, Seattle people were tuning into that. People were following these bookstores on Instagram. So it was a challenging environment. It was fascinating and fun because I could be virtually in a lot of different places, but it was really challenging. This year, I've been really lucky that W Hotels is behind this tour. Crosley's back with us, for Booze and Vinyl 1, which came out in 2018, which now seems like just a lifetime ago. I went across the country in a mobile listening van from New York to Nashville, which was really fun, really live, really grinding it out, met a lot of people on the road. So it was a really fun tour. I didn't know what to expect with this one. So Crosley's along for the ride on this one, but also W Hotels is kicked in. So I'm doing, as you guys know, kicking it off in Philadelphia. The new W Hotel there is just fantastic. And then I head out to Seattle, and I also do Chicago, W Hotel. And there's
7 days.
Yeah,
7 days.
7 days. The countdown has begun. It's super exciting. And I think what it is, everyone's just really excited to get together. I did not plan a lot of. I did in advance. We did not really know what this tour was going to look like, and we just had interest from all kinds of cities all over the country. So I'm basically starting out here, and then I finished the tour essentially out there with you, Aaron, in Los Angeles in June. So I'll be on the road from basically next week until June.
Wow.
Hey, so that's pretty good. So you start things off with the East Coast office, and you finish things with the West Coast office.
Absolutely.
Right.
I love it.
Fantastic.
Booze dancing across America is what
Excellent.
I'm
Booze, vinyl, dancing. It's all good. It's all good.
Before we go too much farther into the book, well, this is kind of in the book, we need to have a toast and talk about what we're drinking.
Yes.
Yeah. So
this is a very short conversation because we talked before we went on live tonight talking about what we were drinking, and oddly enough, we only have 2 drinks mentioned from the book. So, Andre, why don't you talk about what you're drinking?
Yes, we did not make this in advance, so there's got to be some special draw to this cocktail. I think that we're all maybe pun guys. So
Well, I like the band. So.
I chose the Oaxacan in Your Footsteps. I did put a couple fun puns in the book. This is for the Police, a fantastic album, of course, Synchronicity. This was, one that was kind of on the cutting room floor for Booze and Vinyl 1. Made it in this time. This is a trick. Oaxacan is used as a pun in a few drinks. I, at one time back in the day, had a great cocktail called the Oaxacan the Clouds. And this one is Oaxacan in Your Footsteps, which is, of course, named after one of the songs on the album, or, the lyrics to the song. The drink is really simple. It's a heavy hitter. It's basically 1.5 ounces of rum. I call for Mount Gay in the book. You can use Pussers. You can use whatever you want. I'm just calling Mount Gay because, Appleton is great. I'm just calling some, a rum that doesn't have its identity is as a fantastic cocktail rum as a backbone to a drink. And then 1 ounce of Amaro, which you can use whatever you want. A lot of cocktailers would go with Averna on this. But, you can do anything from Fernet to Jägermeister if you really wanted to, and it would work. And then 1/2 ounce of mezcal. So we've got Amaro, rum, and mezcal. It's a little bit of a weirdo. It's a lot of flavor. It's got a lot of spice on the nose and a good finish. If you put it on a large rock, it's going to keep changing flavors because each of the ingredients in there is a kind of a fascinator. So you've got the rum and the mezcal and the Amaro working together. So it's a lot, but I think it's a fun drink.
Now, oddly enough, Angelo and I made the same drink.
Yes.
Because we are idiots of lack of choice.
Well, here's the thing. I really wanted something that was pretty much all booze.
Yeah.
Because, something I could also just keep pouring and not worry about it, kind of, breaking up. So I figured I did that. I did a double.
Oh,
so I put it in my shaker, stirred it up with some ice, dumped the ice, put it in the freezer for a while.
Oh.
And then I got my big rock. Didn't have any orange, though, so I used lemon. But whatever.
Yeah. That'll work too.
It's delicious.
Well, it is Good Thursday, as you said. So you're going to have a particularly good Thursday.
Yeah. Very good Thursday.
Yes. It's been a long couple of weeks.
So far, so good with mine. Mike, what do you got?
I saw the Oaxacan in the book, and the first thing I thought of was Angelo's going to make that drink.
I wish you had told me.
And he did.
Oh, it's all right. It's good.
I'm a very simple cocktail person. Very few ingredients because I don't have many. I leave them at Angelo's house when he makes me a cocktail. So I
get to clean up the mess.
I saw the bourbon sweet tea. It serves 6 to 10. I skinnied it down to just serve me because I don't want to drink.
So 4 to 5.
10 of those. So 4 to 5. So I went with 3 ounces of tea.
Nice.
And a little simple syrup, and then just 1 ounce of Four Roses. I threw in Four Roses single barrel.
Perfect.
Just to go and put something together.
You're starting summer early. That's
absolutely
great summer sipper.
There was a runner-up though. The Ventura Boulevardier was a really close second.
That was the other one I thought you'd make.
Me too. I almost made that too. It's very close. It's got Campari in it. Another irresistible pun.
Oh yeah.
I have a secondary drink, which is actually here. We'll talk about it later. Yeah. But before we go too far, cheers to all.
Cheers,
everyone.
Cheers.
We're all here together again, and thank you again, Andre, for coming back.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is always a blast. This is the beginning of my sort of virtual tour, and here we go.
Oh, yeah.
So before we jump into the book a little bit, let's talk about your other books. I was talking to a friend who did not know you, and I was telling them about your wonderful career and the books you have, and he was just amazed. And he was like, "Where will I get these?" Like, Amazon. Go to Amazon, quick, hurry! So, give us a quick little run through. We know there was a Booze and Dancing Volume 1, Booze and Vinyl Volume 1. Talk about the other ones for a bit.
Yeah, so first book that came out was called New Cocktail Hour. It came out in 2016. 2016 is really sort of prehistoric these days in cocktails. And what's funny is my career, I had just, I came out of college, and the craft cocktail revolution, as we call it now, that happened in the early 2000s was in full swing. And by 2014, when we were looking at doing that book, I thought, maybe this has run its course. I couldn't have been more wrong. Of course, that it went from a small group of people sort of online and at bars in some of the larger cities to every restaurant in America kind of at least paying lip service to craft cocktails. And it was kind of the book that we couldn't find on the shelf. The press came to me and asked and said, we want you to write a classic cocktail book. And I sort of laughed. Well, it's like the market tells you whether you have a classic cocktail book or not. It's not something you can really engineer. But I tried to do the best I could. It's the first book that ran in chronological order. So I really wanted to tell the story of the cocktail. It's got a lot of bells and whistles on it. It really, it was the first book to sort of assemble modern classics, everything from like Naked and Famous to, the penicillin. These are drinks that everybody knows now, but in 2016 still, these were kind of, new, not necessarily new, but certainly not, widely known. So from that book, I worked on a book for Turner Classic Movies, which is sort of a cocktail book, but it's a great book because basically we looked at classic movies, some of Turner Classic's best, and they gave us access to their archives, and we were sort of able to choose the movies. And we really did kind of an entertainment guide where we do food and drink from the movies. And I've always wanted to actually do more than that with that, because I know really funny, really obscure movie details, like the fact that the first Bloody Mary appears in My Man Godfrey in the 30s. Just all kinds of like weird cocktail history, including some movies that prove that vodka was around a lot earlier than anyone thinks. It's kind of like those articles about the discovery of the world. We keep finding out that somebody was in North American shores earlier than we thought. And vodka is a little bit like that. You're like, wait a minute, there's a movie from like 1931 where everyone's drinking vodka, but that wasn't supposed to happen until Smirnoff brought it in. So what's going on? So there's a lot of history that was buried, and it's actually available in some of those old movies, which are also just fun because everyone is just utterly trashed, basically during the scene because they're burning, back in the day. Because
they're going through real alcohol.
Yeah, back in the day, the scripts were kind of like more like suggestions,
Right.
and people were just kind of getting drunk and riffing. So some really, really fun scenes. I've done a few PowerPoints at different events with that. But to speed it up a little bit, then we did Booze and Vinyl 1, which I went across the country in a mobile listening van with Crosley turntables. The book did really well, and it was really fun. It was multi-generational. It sort of caught the breeze that was happening anyway with vinyl resurgence. I think right around 2019, 2020 is when vinyl came back and outsold, CDs, and we're in the millions and millions. And now, of course, Record Store Day is super popular. So that was just a ball that was already rolling. And then during the pandemic, that book went crazy. So actually, when I was working on Booze Cruise, I was back in the photo studio with my editor, and we looked at each other and we're like, why don't we just do another Booze and Vinyl? And it was kind of funny because people, when the first book came out, everyone's, a lot of people were like, when are you going to do this is great. When are you going to do more albums? And I thought, I don't know if that's going to happen. Maybe. I mean, the book has to do really well for it ever to be a volume 2. But magically, here we are. And it's been an incredible experience to be able to go back and do another volume. And of course, this time it also has a game associated with it, which, when it was pitched to me, the idea for this game, I didn't see in my head. But now that it's out, it's basically a memory matching game, beautifully done. We can, fan it out later for people to see. Just really, really fun. It also has its own cocktail, ingredient guide in it. So it's a full, basically mini cocktail book of drinks that are in both volumes. So it's super fun. So kind of a dream come true. I'm super passionate about cocktails and super passionate about music. And here I am. I'm able to put out another book.
So when you did the first Booze and Vinyl, how many albums / cocktails did you have in total? to pare down to get to the book? Approximately
hundreds and hundreds. One of my methods of my right behind the scenes for my writing is that these books often start with they'll start with lists, but also start with like a full Excel spreadsheet. And that one, of course, I was treading new water, so I was really panicked about it, really trying to figure out what was in there. It's funny, a lot of people think that these books are kind of what I like and what I have at home. Yes, I love the albums that are in the books, but these are not necessarily my personal choices. I spend hundreds of hours looking at, all of the lists, the Rolling Stone Top 500, and, NME, looking at what the Brits say, looking at what the French say. Also, I always have in mind that the cradle of vinyl, you could end up with a lot of white guys in the 70s, right? And so you really have to be careful.
Just like here.
Give a broad.
Well, at least we're not white guys in our 70s.
Yeah,
right. I barely remember my 70s.
Born in, maybe. So it's a real game to pare it down. And also, I was always looking for albums that are really great to listen through all the way, that really kind of speak to a mood, that are really unique. So there's other great albums that are out there that may be top sellers that just are too much like something else, or they just, for whatever reason, I couldn't find out that much information on them. I do a lot of digging into what the artists themselves drank. I do a lot of digging into lyrics. I do a lot of digging into, the kind of the behind the scenes, what people were drinking, or if I can make puns.
Yeah. So your sister Tenaya is part, right? She's part of this process. She's a co-author with you on that book and this book. So talk about what she brings, what her skill set brings to all this.
Yeah, we worked the first 3 books that I mentioned, the New Cocktail Hour, the Turner Classic Movies, and Booze and Vinyl 1. We worked together very closely on those books. In the first cocktail books, almost to the point where, I was like, okay, I'll take the start of the book, you take the back of the book, let's meet in the middle. And then we would kind of cross over and edit each other. We both are writers, both have been editors at newspapers and magazines. So it was kind of a great fit. This time she's a cheese impresario. She's Madame Fromage, and she does a lot of cheese work. She was in Europe for most of
cheese work.
Cheese work, yeah. There's just a lot of work and heavy lifting for the books. So when we share that, she is going to be at the event in Philadelphia, the big kickoff.
Excellent.
And then so Angelo will be there for that, and Mike hopefully. And then she's back to Europe. So most of the rest of the tour, I'm on my own. And,
has she moved to Europe officially, or just going back and forth?
Not moved. She teaches creative writing at St. Joseph's, so she is gone for the summer again, and then back. She was been on sabbatical.
Oh, okay.
So back to Philadelphia. But she also leads these cheese tours. So we both have this sort of like life in food and bev. But I'm much more the bev.
You do the food too, though. Your books are pretty well represented in terms of food and drink, because if you don't eat, you're going to be on the floor.
Yeah, so I really had a good time adding food. Booze and Vinyl, this new volume has probably 6 or 7. Some light snacks down to more fun stuff in the book. So I do love doing the food.
Hey, here's one question for you. May I?
Go ahead, Ange.
In terms of the number of albums and all that, do you work with your publisher for that, or is it like something manageable that you and Tenaya kind of settle on? Like we can do 60 albums and 120 cocktails.
We worked it out with the publisher. That was kind of the length that they wanted to do. There has to be a number, and I think in the first book it did float around a little bit, and it just worked out to be 70, which of course, especially in the first volume, was a lot of pain behind the scenes of cutting albums that were thankfully, there's so many hits in volume 2, and it just speaks to like what only being able to choose 70 volumes does to a book. But yeah, 70 albums and 140 cocktails, which is a lot for a cocktail book.
Absolutely.
Most of the cocktail books on the market are under 100 for sure, in the 75 range. So it's about double that. I will say one of the interesting things on this one was, when we did Booze and Vinyl 1, we had a lot of material. We basically had put all of American cocktail history up in our heads for writing the new Cocktail Hour and the TCM book. And we had a lot of cocktails available that we knew that we could pair up with drinks. And the publisher was very interested in having it being a largely 3-ingredient. They were really strongly suggestive to do 3 ingredients. Keep it simple. It's called Booze and Vinyl. People want to use this as an entertainment guide. It was very heavy on music, which I thought was fun because it was an opportunity to do music. For this one, there was much less to rely on. So there are a lot of original cocktails in here. And I've been lucky enough that I have a guy that I work with in Philadelphia named Kevin Lundell, who has a Broad Street Beverage Co. company. We've worked together on a number of books now. He did Batman with me, and he did Booze Cruise with me, just to help recipe test, to workshop. As a bar owner, I come from an environment where if you create a drink, you have to get other people's opinions on it. You have to workshop everything, like you're workshopping a poem or a short story or a short video or whatever artistic that you do. So I've been lucky to do that. But there are a lot of original cocktails in this, which is a big step for me forward. I think I really did a lot of originals in Batman. And I've been at it for a number of years, but for me, I come from being a journalist, and I thought, these people do this professionally. I usually write about cocktailers. That's how I got my start. But for these books, it's just turned into something that I know how to do and enjoy and create. And it gave me the opportunity to do fun names like Walking in Your Footsteps.
I can't imagine the amount of time you put in just on the cocktail side, experimenting and tasting and coming down with a recipe before you put it to paper.
Yeah, it is a lot going on behind the scenes. I was thinking about it in terms of, if restaurants, good restaurant bars that aren't specifically a bar are coming up with like 8 cocktails probably per season. That takes a lot of work behind the scenes to do. Wow. So to come up with something like 140, Kevin and I, who have both consulted on restaurant openings, are like, this is like 4, 5 to 6 restaurant openings in this book.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about these cocktails for a book that a bartender may not be reading this book, schlubs like us are going to be reading this book at home. Are you thinking about schlubs like us making cocktails, or are you thinking about professionals making cocktails? Hey, I'm speaking for all of us.
That's a great question. I think a lot about how many bottles total I'm requiring in a book. I am a huge egalitarian, and I really believe strongly in sort of home amateurs or prosumers being a big part of the cocktail scene, which they have been in the United States. And I think coming from being a journalist too and writing to an audience, I have a really good sense of like how far I can go. What's been really interesting is that during the pandemic, actually, cocktail knowledge, I think, has gone up in America some. A lot of people have, and also just time, a lot of people have immersion circulators. A lot of people are smoking cocktails to a degree that I certainly didn't see before the pandemic. So there's always kind of a floating level that I'm looking at. But I'm definitely aiming at the home cocktailer for these because I feel like it's a book about booze and vinyl. It's really a listening party book. My best hope is that people get together with, their loved one or a couple friends and make cocktails and experience these albums, or do it for themselves and experience these albums. I find it's a very interesting question for a number of reasons. We're in an era where we have a lot of professional bartenders or bars or people that are masquerading as human beings but are actually corporations making their books are ghost written. There are millions of dollars behind some of these brands that are the best-selling cocktail books. And you buy these books, and it's very clear that their audience is other cocktails and that they're other cocktailers, professional bartenders, and they're showboating, the ingredients that they have in the drinks, which is fun to a certain point. I certainly enjoy them as somebody who has a lot of the ingredients. But the average person picks one of those books off the shelf, and they're more of like conceptual art or like a coffee table book, right? That you're not going to make a lot of. So I really do want people to make the cocktails in here. And it always wounds me when people are like, your books are so expensive to produce, which is true, but it is cheaper than going to a bar these days.
Right.
But I do want to make sure that, like with 12 or so bottles, people, or even 6 bottles, people can really get there and enjoy themselves. So I do put a lot of work into culling, ingredients. Often I'll want to put an ingredient in a drink because it's just speaking to that album, and it's like it's just another bottle I'm asking people to work on. So I always make sure that every bottle that I ask for, probably in the 4 or 5 drinks range. So if you get that bottle, you'll be able to do other stuff with it.
We really saw that.
I like that. You point out that the versatility of Jaeger.
Yeah.
That a lot of people wind up and you have a bottle of Southern Comfort in your house and a bottle of Jägermeister, and you may not remember why you have those bottles.
Right.
And in your book, there's plenty of uses for them now.
Yeah.
Where before it was like, well, I don't want to drink them straight. I'm not, sneaking this bottle out of my parents' cabinet anymore. I'm a professional. I thought it was really interesting that you're able to go and say, well, it's actually an Amaro. You can actually use that. Keep substituting that in. And it keeps it to that 10 bottles in your house. You might actually have that bottle and not really have used it because you didn't know what to do. And now this is an approachable book to tell you this is what you do.
Yeah, and it's fun. SoCo was. I'm glad you brought that up. Southern Comfort was actually, we've all had it. We mostly had it when we were younger. It's sort of verboten in real cocktail world. But yet it's absolutely delicious if you use it correctly, which is to add sugar to a drink. And, of course, Janis Joplin was, basically died with the bottle of it in her hand. She loved it. And a lot of those 60s artists drank SoCo. And it was really fun to revisit. And I really actually enjoyed some of those SoCo drinks in the book are some of my favorite. We had a blast. We were like, Southern Comfort is delicious. That's why we all drank it as children.
Well, it's funny because we just reviewed it a little while ago, and I haven't had it. When's the last time I had it? Like 30 years ago? 35 years ago?
Yeah.
Probably I didn't realize that it's really not very strong.
No. Really weak.
It's a liqueur, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's more like a rock and rye, but like a really watered down rock and rye.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but again, like you said, as a base for another drink, it would be really good.
Yeah.
And after we reviewed it, I found a bottle of it in the back of my liquor cabinet.
There you
I
go.
didn't even know I had it.
I got one.
Didn't even know I had it.
It's fun.
I think the other side of that, excuse me, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The other side of that is that during this whole pandemic, the last 2 years, people have been home, not going to bars and becoming home bartenders.
Yep.
And upping their games. Yep. We've seen it. And either bringing home cocktails from bars, but going the next step and trying to create those drinks that they like, and doing Zoom tastings and doing Zoom bar classes and really trying to be better cocktail makers at home.
Yep.
And these kinds of books, I think, really help out.
Yeah, I always feel like a proselytizer. I feel like it's, my background as a journalist. I love to get people involved in cocktails. I also love to get them involved in music and in vinyl. And it's surprising, I think I'm just of the generation as you guys are too, where we just take this music for granted, really. It's not, we may not have listened to it, but seeing the cover is not a surprise. We know it. But it's shocking how many people say, I never would have listened to that album. I've never heard of that album. And I love, I love that too, to introduce people to different genres. And I felt like while I was writing the book, I was falling in love with albums too that I had either missed or hadn't really listened to or really hadn't put in context, and like I have some genres I'm just not a huge fan. I'm just not going to put it on for myself. But man, is it fun to kind of do a deep dive and really appreciate how fun they are. And booze is the same. And I think we went through this very high-toned cocktail era where you couldn't drink vodka. All the things you drank when you were young were not cool. And things have really turned around. People are having fun again. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to have Jägermeister in the house, realize it's an Amaro, and use it as a dab on top of whiskey. It's going to taste really good. There's no reason why Fernet should be hip and Jägermeister is not okay, even though they're very great. They're both great products and they both do different things. So the variety is just fun, allowing people to play with these, I think of them as just tools, and music is these mood tools, and the bottles are these really specific just ingredients like a pepper or a tomato, that you're putting into these drinks.
So let's talk about music. When you were going through this process, you said these weren't all necessarily your favorite albums at all, and maybe not your sister's. Did you listen to albums in total? Did you just pick and choose songs from an album to kind of get the feel of what the first Black Sabbath album was, or whatever the album was? Or did you actually listen to them in total to kind of get the whole experience to come up with what cocktail would go with that?
Yeah, I work in a series of layers, so it's kind of culling a giant list, and then I do listen through the albums. I love to listen to the full album and kind of let gestate on it and listen to it and put it next to the other albums that will be nearby in the book. The books basically run. This is also mood based, just like Booze and Vinyl 1 was. It's a little different. There's a jazzy. I think we had Seduce in the last book. This one's more just like a relaxed. And so the moods are a little bit different, but kind of the same breakdown, just because we wanted to give people something for their mind to like change. Now you're in a new chapter. Here's kind of a different approach. But definitely listening to the full albums. I'm always looking for albums that really do transport you and don't necessarily have some album breakers. And it's funny. One good example is we all chose this Oaxacan in Your Footsteps for Police's Synchronicity, which has the song Mother on it, which just makes you want to skip the song. Right.
It's not the greatest song. The greatest song.
It's one of the big exceptions in both books where it's such a great album. It's such a landmark album that it goes in anyway, even though you're probably, if you're sitting on the carpet enjoying this drink, you're probably going to get up and maybe skip that song. So I'm always looking for albums that, are really listenable. You really gets you in there without kind of these jarring things going on. But of course, Police Synchronicity, the album is kind of about jarring. They were one of the first people to put all these different wild beats in, and there's just a lot going on. So I think the person who loves that album also loves the song Mother, even though for the rest of us, it might be a little difficult.
How did your sister and you work on this? Are you guys talking about music and then you're just sharing on Spotify? How did that work?
Yeah, we sort of just have a document that we share and we kind of go back and forth with it. She'll take part of a section. There's just a lot going on in here. So there's a lot of the backbone to figuring out what's going to be in the book to all the way to the mood. At this point, we're thinking about like garnishes and sort of the whole page. Just because we've been doing it long enough to we know that the next step after handing in the manuscript is the photographer says, okay, so what are the photos from the book? So we're like finally at the point where it's like, oh, right. We need to add that in. So there's just a ton of work on the books behind the scenes by almost a number of people at this point.
Do you have to get rights approved for using?
It was fascinating. In Booze and Vinyl 1, everyone was extraordinarily careful to not shoot full pictures of full album covers. They were much less careful in this one. It seems to be that if the cover is in a setting, you can kind of show it in a lifestyle. So it's like an editorial use.
Show the book here for people.
Yeah, show the cover, which, I should mention we've gotten incredibly lucky. And I think that this is how quality happens, is that this is the same team that shot Booze and Vinyl 1 down to the same, Josh McDonald, the incredible
amazing team.
A graphic designer, to Christy Hunter, who's the stylist, who goes out, she's also in Philadelphia, goes out and finds all of the stuff that make the sort of terroir of the book. And then also same editor. So it's the same scene. And Jason Varney, of course, the photographer. And this time we again rented a hotel room for a week in Philadelphia and basically styled the books out, which is of course a magical experience to be part of that shoot. Super fun. But I think part of it was, we looked at each other. We were like, we want to do a volume 2. We just need to roll this down the middle and make sure that we give everybody what they loved about volume 1. Not get too crazy. There's so much good music out there. There's so many good cocktails out there that we just want this to be like, yes, 1 was great. 2 is also great. What I love about 2 is it's really colorful. I think it's kind of a little like it just has it really is an upbeat book to it. It's a little bit more modern. I think we slipped in a few more. If you're just looking at dates of when albums came out, we're a little bit more modern. There's quite a bit of hip hop in there. There's quite a bit of modern pop in it. So it's really exciting. It's juicy. It's colorful. It's sort of like 2.0 is like bigger and bolder than 1.0.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Speaking of the hip hop piece,
yeah,
the Dr. Dre album, The Chronic.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that listening party. I bought that album after when it first came out, and it was only after listening to all this, listening to all the videos on MTV, and they're all cleaned up.
Yeah,
right. So they're all, they've all been. They're more. What do you want to call it? Generic, not generic, but more sanitized. Thank you. Censored, if you will. When I got the album, and I used to blast vinyl at home, I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm like, I lived in South Philly, and I would crank the albums, and I will say my neighbors only called once that I had to use
That's pretty good.
But I was like, I can't listen to this. I mean, it's great. I like it. I've gone back and listened to it, but it's like, oh my God. I can't imagine that'd be an interesting listening party.
Yeah, a real classic from which so many other albums sprang. And I'm always looking for that kind of thing too. I was able to slip Kraftwerk into this, which is a band, that I personally do love, but a lot of people do not. And a lot of people do not know that album. That album is so responsible for so much stuff after it just because of their use of keyboards.
Totally.
And layering effect and electronica. So I think that's a surprise to people, but I love to slip in those albums. They're like, these are watershed vinyl albums, and they really are this incredible listening experience. But I agree, The Chronic was very funny. On set, if you'll look at, people will see the picture for that. There is cannabis in that photo, which, was a real surprise. I was like, okay, here we go. This is good. The press is going to greenlight that. I think it's really fun. I think it's one of the great photos of the book.
By the way, D's nuts. Love it.
D's nuts.
That's fantastic.
I worked very hard on that recipe because I had the idea for it, and then to actually make it work.
That's fantastic.
So do you think name first, then cocktail, or cocktail and then come up with a name, or is it kind of a combo?
Is it listen to the album first and see where the inspiration takes you?
For sure. Yeah. Down and looking at lyrics, again, looking at what people are drinking. The Mcnick Spritz is actually a really fun drink. We'll be serving it actually at the Philadelphia launch. And that is a combination of, Christy and the two lead singers of in there. And there's the combination of what they both drank. There's quite a few things in there like that. The Dr. Dre, it's going to be cognac. I mean, that's just what that landscape looks like. So there's some fun stuff like that. One of my other favorite ones that I was able to slip in here was Roxy Music, which of course is a watershed album. What's really fun about these books is I had no idea that Alanis Morissette was going to be back on tour, which she is, giant tours. I had no idea that Roxy Music was going to reunite this year.
Got my tickets.
50 years. Did you get tickets?
Yep.
Yeah, I got the tickets too. I mean, really going to be one of the shows of the decade. I've seen him, but seeing him with Roxy Music will be amazing.
Yep.
And it'll be in the news when the book comes out. And I just don't have any sense of that, but it proves that some of these albums are just so timeless that they the people are still on tour. But I was able to slip in a very fun, my Seaside Diamond is one of my favorite drinks in that book, a really kind of wacky drink. Again, I'm kind of loosened up in this book because things like Blue Curacao are back. People are having fun again. I never would have dreamed of putting that in a cocktail book in 2016. Like, no.
I just saw, I think on Eater yesterday, that there's a bar opening in LA and it's all like 90s drinks, 90s era.
I just saw
so
that.
there's was it not, it was 90s, right?
Yeah,
and was so 90s. Isn't that weird?
I was like, too soon. I realized, wait, 25 years. Okay, all right.
It's not too soon. It's like a long time ago.
Be like a Sex on the Beach or a Cosmo,
that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, Cosmos, that kind of stuff.
Cosmos were Appletinis.
Singapore's names, kamikazes. Come on.
Well, we've seen with the pandemic, the rise of the espresso martini, where the bartenders across the country are telling me, half of the drinks I make are espresso martinis, which is wild to me. They are making them better than they were made in my era when we were drinking them. And I don't, it's a weird phenomenon. I think it's a retro thing, obviously also a caffeine thing, and a flavor thing. But I thought that was fascinating. I mean, the 90s are back in a big way in clothing and sort of references everywhere. So I've been looking at that.
So we're all men of a certain age here. Andre, were you a vinyl guy?
I was, because my father was into vinyl. It's really interesting. I grew up with a father that was into vinyl and then went heavily into digital, kind of got rid of everything. But of course, the turntable just kind of got slid. He had this incredible Thorens turntable, and it just kind of got slid over to the side. And I basically inherited it when he went to full digital. And I was always kind of in it because I was sort of a thrift store guy. So picking up vinyl was just like, when everybody was dumping it, I was like, I can play it for parties. Yeah. I don't care.
Sure.
CDs got scratched so horribly at parties that are like, well, might as well just throw the vinyl on. So it was really funny. And I find it fascinating and amazing that it's back, back again to the extent that it is. And it is such a great listening experience.
I dumped all my vinyl.
Did you?
Well, that's a mistake, my friend.
Well, it's like I got married. I was moving out of my parents' house. I didn't have the room,
There's only so much analog you can have in your life, I'm realizing. After moving, you can either be into books or you can be into vinyl or you can be like, into plants or whatever, but you can't be into all of it.
Yes.
No, you can't. Yes. You really can't.
So do you see a connection between cocktail making and these analog things, these vinyl in this case, the tactile experience, the putting your hands on something, seeing something, getting away from the digital?
Yeah, I'm always exploring that. There's that great book, kind of the return of the digital, the return of the analog. I can't remember the exact title off the top of my head, but it's a
I read it was a good book. I can't remember.
David Sachs, I think.
Yeah, it's a fascinating
I'll get it. I have it.
Topic that I think about quite a bit. I remember, I think for so many people, they would get this vinyl, and it's not just the vinyl, right? You get the vinyl, and then the cover art would sort of drop out when you open it up, and you're sort of engaged in this world of the of the artist and what they wanted you to see in terms of art and everything. But also, I think that people are just looking for these great experiences, and I think cocktails and having cocktails was, it is sort of almost the exact same experience in that instead of huddling around a record player, you're kind of huddling around a bar, but it's for slowing down. You're paying attention to what's in the drink. You're having, it's kind of life with the hisses and pops, which is the same that you're interested in the vinyl. And, it is funny, being, such a digital baby, I'll be cooking, and it's invariably when I've just decided to like marinate chicken and rub it with my bare hands that the A side's over, right? So I do understand why digital is so convenient, but it also is so it's so lonely. And I do think that the vinyl, part of why people get into it is the community of it and having something analog, so you're not just wearing your earbuds and you are talking with people. I mean, I just look on Instagram and people just love posting pictures of their records, and then thousands of people like it, and it's
right.
And it's like, what is that? It's almost like, you can post a picture of the food you just had, but it's like, it's something coming out of the screen. They really love and fetishize these albums as full works of art. And it's something
thank goodness you're putting a book out, a physical book.
Right.
You're not putting out a digital thing for Kindle. You're putting out a physical book about physical things.
Yeah, I got the PDF on my iPad right now. Okay,
it is available on PDF. I was just thinking about the other day that I really am a person of the book, and I'm kind of the generation where I love books. I have a hard time still consuming digital. I think if I lived in a city and was commuting on a subway, I would have, more digital. Or if I were an insomniac and I was up late at night, I have a lot of friends that are that, and they have Kindles, and it's a thing. And I get it. For me, I still just love like the pulp paper feel of books and opening them, and I still think they're magic. And I think that the way that the book has magic when you open it, I think albums have that magic too. I mean, I still get a kick out of, going and getting new vinyl and opening it up. It's a kick. There just is. It's an irreplaceable kick.
The price will kill you, but yes.
I know. I just went to the store. I'm like, so vinyl's $35, like minimum.
I saw Tattoo You for $48.
Yeah, right.
Don't get me wrong. I love that album, and I had it on 8-track back in the day. But 48, I was like, oh my God, 48. But then albums were never really that cheap, though. I mean, you figure an album was even when we were kids, they were like $10, $12.
Yeah.
I worked in a record store in the 80s, and they were $6.99. Double album was $11.99.
I always bought used.
And I bought used too.
Yeah.
Yep. New stuff was expensive.
And it was kind of fun too when you do the used, right? Because you're in the back of the store, you're taking it out, you're looking for scratches, you're doing the whole thing. Yeah. It was always a process. It was look at these cool ones.
Because they were expensive. I remember one of your friends would buy the album, and then you'd go over to their house and listen to it. You couldn't have access to that. If you didn't hear it on the radio, you just weren't hearing that song, which I think people forget that, we coveted these albums because you just couldn't hear it otherwise. You just weren't going to hear the Cocteau Twins unless you owned it, especially if you're like growing up in or something, or like OMD or some of these, so you weren't going to, listen to anything kind of edgy.
I had a cousin who had an extensive album collection, and he wouldn't play them.
Right. Yeah.
He'd play them. No, he'd play them one time and tape it.
Oh, wow.
I did that too.
And then it would go away. Museum quality kind of stuff. Like, oh no. We don't play. We don't touch those. They're over there.
Wow. Yeah, but that's no fun.
To me, that sounded like an insane person. But what do I know?
You made your
that's
not fun though. That's like buying like a really nice car and then never driving it.
But he would.
It's like, come on.
And then once the tape ran out, he would play it again to tape it. But he wanted the hisses and pops, but he didn't want to risk damaging the album cover or damaging the scratching anything, causing any sort of damage to his precious record collection.
Right. That's funny.
All of my vinyl are in these little plastic
protective sleeves.
Yeah, protective sleeves. Yeah. Yep.
Just going back to it a little bit and like the presence of the vinyl too. I mean, just the physicality of it's great. But one of the albums in the book that, really jumps out on vinyl is something like Willie Nelson's Redheaded Stranger, where if you play it, it's an album I knew. I knew those songs. I'd listened to it, but I didn't really spend any time with it on vinyl. And I put it on. I got it, put it on, and Willie Nelson is sitting behind the speaker. It's got that level of like tube amp gorgeousness. And you kind of are like, oh, this is what real vinyl heads are talking about, where you can place where the singer is, where the microphones were in the room, if you have a decent enough hi-fi system, to kind of hear that. So there's some there's just some magic on there. The Ray Charles album is incredible on vinyl too.
Vinyl is such a package, and the experience of holding the vinyl, putting it on the turntable, getting the needle onto it, and then sitting back with the liner notes, the album jacket, and immersing yourself,
Yeah.
right? And if you have something like a cocktail next to you, it's even better. And right,
but then you might scratch the record though if you get drunk.
You might once you get it on there.
That's the beauty of digital, right? You can't insure the record, you can insure your phone.
So you said Crosley's is sponsoring the tour.
Yeah.
How are they part of this?
Yeah, this time, the van is no more that we went around in 2018. This time they're doing turntable giveaways at all the events.
Oh, that's awesome.
I do find them fun. I know a lot of audio heads fault Crosley, for, their entry-level turntables. I'm a huge egalitarian. I feel like people need to start somewhere.
Yeah,
totally.
It's funny, when I was on the tour in the van, I would get these sort of grandparents coming in and looking at those Crosleys, and they would say, I listened to Elvis on a little suitcase thing that would slide out from under my bed. It didn't sound any better than that. And I was like, that's really fascinating and really historic and really awesome. And I credit Crosley, I think they sell millions of turntables a year. And one of the things I hear often is, I love vinyl. It's so expensive. How do I get into it? If I want to have 3 different pieces of things, I'm at $350, $400, $500 really quickly. And I say, you can go get a Crosley, at Target. Audio Technica makes some low-end ones. Even Sony's now kind of figuring out that there's a market down there. Because if you're in high school or college, where you're really wanting to get into this, you don't have any money. So it's been really fun working with them. I do think that Crosley turntables are super cute and approachable. And a lot of the old 50s and 60s guitar jangly stuff sounds really good on them. I mean, the Stones sound great on a, I won't say Crosley's crappy, but they sound great on an old, not that great turntable,
Well, I think you're right. They have helped make this explosion happen amongst anyone under 30. And they have made it accessible and approachable, because you can't just jump in and, unless you're a baby boomer and you're going to spend $1,000 on a whole sound system or the beginnings of a sound system.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Beginnings of a sound system.
I mean, I would still my thing is I hope that, the package is get 3 bottles, get 3 or 4 albums, get an inexpensive turntable, and you can begin your journey, and if you like it, great. You can explore what you like, and it's just a way to get out of those headphones, and get out of that cold world that that we all know and love, but it's still just a thing, sit on the floor and listen to something. So that's my hope, that brings people together.
You mentioned sitting on the floor. You have Dolly Parton in your book.
Yeah.
And my youngest sister, when she was probably like 8 years old, for some reason, fell in love with Dolly Parton, and she had a Ladybug record player.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So you pull the Ladybug top off, and you play there, and she played that so often. I would like to kill her and maybe Dolly Parton at that point in time, because she just wouldn't stop. It was like a Rain Man kind of thing.
I love it.
But that was, your first experience for her. She that was the greatest thing in the world for her. It was her own thing. She could sit on the floor and play it. It was spectacular.
Speaking of sisters, did you and Tenaya fight over choices?
No, not for this one, because we really try to
for this one.
Not personal.
The whole rest of her life, sure, but not.
Yeah, exactly.
Not this one.
Everything else.
In case you're listening, Mom, we did not fight on this one.
No, this one is much more like we know what we had to do and what we had to put in there to make each chapter kind of ring, well, and have something for everyone. We really wanted to have multiple points of entry into this. If you're a vodka drinking Britney Spears fan, we got you. If you want to listen to Pet Shop Boys, we got you. If you want to listen to hip hop, you can. We just want we want a lot going on in the book. And it's much easier. That was much easier on volume 2, because we kind of had the formula in a way of what was going to go in.
Hey, you know what? I was flipping through the book. And I'm looking at this one picture just really stood out at me. For Air Moon Safari.
Oh yeah.
Now I don't know who Air is. I don't know Moon Safari. This I'm not familiar with at all. But the Gin Sonic
Yeah.
I just love the way this thing is photographed. It just really looks awesome. Page 128 in the book, I believe. Let me check.
And the Gin Sonic is one of those like
that sounds awesome.
It's one of those easy as dirt drinks that you don't think of, but it's easy as
ingredients.
I have a friend who drinks them a lot because they want to lower the sugar. I mean, one of my problems with gin and tonics, I love a big gin and tonic.
But the gin disappears no matter what you have.
The gin disappears, and the sugar at the end of the drink, you're just like, wow, I love that, but I can't do another one. So if you split, it's not a split basis. It's basically
I actually could do another one, but the problem is gin and tonics go down really easy.
Yeah, that's another
really
one.
easy.
So do you.
I think the photography.
Hey now. Anyway, but that looks really, really good. That's a fantastic photo too.
And simple.
Yes, it's striking. I like the artwork with the way the air Moon Safari is. And then you just go to the right, and there's this just crystal clear, glass with ice and just gin and it just looks fantastic.
Right?
I want one. I want one right now.
It's so funny because when you travel, especially to Europe, the Europeans and actually in Asia too, the Japanese are really great at this. In the U.S., we always feel like we have to be in this arms race. We have to go have a cocktail. It's going to have a syrup that has something obscure. It's got to have 4 or 5 ingredients. It's got to do this thing. And it's like, no, the fundamentals, it's like, I think of some of the good, 2 and 3 ingredient cocktails. It's like unaccompanied Bach, right? Good ice, really good seltzer where the carbonation is correct. Everything's the right temperature, the right glass. You can create a great experience very simply. I mean, in the U.S., we get this at steakhouses, right? You go into a steakhouse or, some kind of classic, or in Philly, you go into an Italian restaurant and you are getting this martini and it's really simple, but they're doing it so well. And we forget that there's a lot in that. Just sit down and get a good gin, split the tonic with the soda, and it's going to be, and put a good garnish on it, and it's going to be great. We don't have to always be drinking something so crazy and garnished.
No, absolutely not.
I think really, part of that too is a lot of the cocktails places are made to sell you one cocktail.
Yeah.
Where you go to a restaurant, they're made to sell you drinks for the length of your meal.
Right.
So they're going to be maybe better quality, better ingredients, maybe a lower ABV so you can carry out through the evening, where the bar knows you're here for one. We're going to jack it up.
Yeah.
And then, who knows what you got, but you got one and that's all you're going to get. And that's unfortunate because I think if they had better quality and they sold you something for more than one cocktail, maybe you'd stay longer. Maybe you'd make a night of it instead of moving on to the next bar to get the next cocktail once.
Well, one of the real problems too at the bar, which I know from, being in the industry, is that you don't get a second chance. You have to give somebody a drink and they have to be like, wow, first sip. There's never that moment of this will get better, a lot better over time. You don't get that opportunity. So the drinks are very forward. You have to have a lot going on all at once. It's like you can't just give somebody some really delicious rice. It's got to have sriracha and soy sauce and ginger right away. Yeah, right away. Because otherwise they're going to hand it back to you across the bar, and be like, So there's not a lot of room for subtlety, which I get a lot more opportunity to make a lot more subtle drinks in these books than I would in a bar.
Sure.
Speaking of drinks, I had made a second drink.
Yeah,
I made the Moonlight Cocktail, which is basically an aviation-based drink, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I'll let you talk about it, Andre. It smells so great.
What page is it on?
147.
Thank you.
147.
Howlin' Wolf.
I don't know what I was doing for most of my childhood. Apparently, it was not listening to any music.
To Howlin' Wolf.
And through the beauty of YouTube, you can actually see these live performers perform this stuff. So I had no idea who this guy was.
Oh,
not at all.
Amazing.
And I listened to him perform 3 songs, not just one, because I'm like, I got to get another one. I got to get another one. Unbelievable. The guy's
just
unbelievable.
Phenomenal. I mean, this was an interesting one. I had a lot of back and forth in my own brain, I guess, of who to use for blues. I spent some time in Chicago and familiar with blues, kind of. But as you guys know, blues is one of those roads that people can go down forever and argue about. And Howlin' Wolf just really has this kind of insane presence, and this incredible presence on vinyl.
The man's enormous. It's not a presence.
Enormous, and
he fills the stage.
Yeah, his voice comes across as enormous. And I thought it was interesting because he's kind of an outlier. You can, B.B. King obviously is amazing. I mean, there's so many good blues players, but the Howlin' Wolf was like, oh yeah, this is like hearkening back to something older and more primitive, and as far as just like you feel like the kind of the dirt blues jams that dirt floor blues jams that you would hear. He came up from the South up to Chicago.
Yep, up from Memphis.
And I kind of wanted to do this like Howlin' Wolf, riff on a moon cocktail. How is it? First of all, do you love it?
It's delicious. It's delicious. It's really good.
An aviation riff with just a little Cointreau in there.
How could it be bad?
Lime juice. This is also one of those, like, I play a lot with, I do weird things like play with creme de violette because I love the aviation. I know it gets a bad rap for some people, but what a gorgeous color. I remember the first time I ever had an aviation.
Pretty.
It's one of my cocktails that when the cocktail revolution was happening in the early 2000s, a bartender made that for me. I'd never had it before, never heard it. Slides it across the bar, and your mind is just blown, right? Purple drink. It's got a great story to it. It's kind of what the whole craft revolution was about, was bringing back awesome drinks and awesome ingredients like that. So I do play with creme de violette a fair amount. And so just switching it up to lime juice, making a little more bluesy, I guess, was the hope.
And what's interesting is you could have easily gone with a guy, Howlin' Wolf, and the size of the man, and gone with some kind of heavy, smoky, bourbon-y drink.
Yeah.
And instead, you went and said, you know what? I'm going to put a spin on this. I'm going to get a well-crafted cocktail instead of just some, brimstone. I'm going to give you something that's a brisket. And you crafted two cocktails in there that kind of take on the whole Chicago-esque, where he went and really became famous. I mean, the guy, this album's from 59. He was 49 years old then.
Yeah.
He wasn't like a young guy making out. Like, this guy had really paid his dues before he hit the big time. And you get the South Side, and it becomes one of those, like, it's a speakeasy kind of thing. This is like an Al Capone. This is, it's interesting that you juxtapose those cocktails with that voice when you could have easily like gone and hit low-hanging fruit and been like, yeah, this is going to be easy. I'm just going to get something. I'm going to put an Isla Scotch out there because he's a peat bog. He sounds
another
like a
Tom Waits riff. Yeah,
exactly. Smoky.
He's got like 100 yards of gravel in his voice. So I'm just going with that.
You're hitting all my spots right now. You just mentioned Isla. You just mentioned Tom Waits. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we're in. I love that Southside cocktail. It's one of my favorite. I think people forget about it. Yeah, it pops up on bar menus, but it's just this like fantastic. We all know the mojito or some of the other mint heavy drinks, juleps and whatnot. And the Southside is sort of this like minty fresh thing. And I did kind of honestly, I spent some good time in down and out Chicago blues bars, and I did kind of put myself in there like, what are people actually drinking in these bars? And, of course, it's all over the place. Lots of, cognac and whiskeys and, whatever people are normally drinking in bars. But you do get this sort of like elegance to it. And he's so gruff, but he really does pull off this kind of ethereal elegance.
Yeah.
And then the howling at the moon drink. And also was just kind of weird. I mean, it was trying to be a little bit of a surprise and expose people to that. So I'm passionate about that album.
You're exposing them to someone they may never have heard before, and a drink they may never have had.
Yeah,
so it was neat.
So and Mike, I got a question for you guys. What are a couple of the albums in here that just kind of surprised you?
Oh, great!
That were in there. Yeah,
I have to go back to the
like,
list.
Whoa!
Now, when
Andre's Kraftwerk was one that I was like, oh my god. I can't believe the Kraftwerk's in a cocktail book. I was stunned. I have a few other ones, but that was a big one. How about you guys?
My musical knowledge is very scant, so the fact that the like 68 of the album surprised me.
That's fantastic.
What amazed me is that one Billy Joel album that you picked was the one album that my oldest brother Sonny brought home.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's funny.
And listen to this. Like, he went off to college at a young age, got, first money making, bought an album, played this stuff out there, and he played The Stranger like you could never possibly ever hear The Stranger again. And I'm like, this is what I know. I know this one.
You have a Dolly album. You have a Dolly house and a Billy Joel house.
Yeah, but it was really funny to go through the albums and be like, nope. I
do have to say, Billy Joel is somebody, of course, I grew up with. He's sort of somebody that I guess everybody poo-poos in a little bit because he's just so there, and he's always been there and kind of always been around. And I have to say that going back and listening to The Stranger and putting it in context and putting it into the context of what a big breakthrough it was for him, but also what a big breakthrough it was for American music, because it proved that really somebody on the American shores were as good as like Elton John. Yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal. The lyrics are phenomenal,
and they tour together.
And
I know
they tour together. I went to that tour, and he is quite the showman. He's tremendous.
I believe it. I actually fell back in love with that album, big time on vinyl. It's funny to say, but
I mean, going back to Billy Joel though, I mean, everything from what ruined him? He got the girl.
Yeah,
and that ruined him.
I know.
It sort of changed his story.
Right. Yeah. Because before Christy Brinkley, it was, the Nylon Curtain. Yeah. After Christy Brinkley, it's Uptown Girl. And I know because I went to that tour. So that was like my second big concert that I ever went to.
It rounded the edges.
Funny. I love that song. I love Uptown Girl as a song, but hear you.
Funny. It was a great show, but it was just, it's not the same as Stranger.
Don't get mad because he fell in love.
No. What I'm saying is, what they've always said about music, that, the songwriting, it's pain. You need pain. You need frustration. You need all that stuff to write a good song.
You can hear how much work that album was. I mean, at a certain point, very few people can probably sustain that level of like high quality songs. Right. I mean, the Beatles, there were 4 of them, right? So they could keep going. But, I'm always like hats off to people like Elton John, who does have a collaborator, but still just like unbelievable output of amazing songs. And I think Billy Joel had a streak there.
Oh, absolutely.
But people forget this, like, after 4 albums, it's like, wow, do you have the energy? You're by the time he was famous, you're in your late 30s, you're not 26 anymore.
Right.
I don't know. It's an interesting run, but I love that album. It has so many good stories.
Oh, it's a great album. It's a really good album.
Yeah, that one's fun.
And do you have any in there that just kind of surprised you?
Just from the theme of the book, which is like a listening party. Again, the Dr. Dre, The Chronic could be a tough one.
Yeah,
because it's I mean, when's the last time you
listened to it? It's a house party.
You don't know how people party these days, Ange.
That's right.
I don't go to parties. I'm stuck in the house.
Oh, man, get off my lawn.
It's but the clouds. When you really start to listen to it, it's tough. There's a lot of angst.
There's a few of them.
Twisted Easy, they're just not happy.
Yeah,
it's a great album though. I mean, I like it. I put it on a couple times and I'm like, wow. I'm playing this with the kids, and my kids love some rap.
Yeah, so, there's some albums in there, that I shied away from that are super impressive.
But it's a classic. I mean, it is a classic. Yeah, and I think it's it deserves to be on the list. Yeah. So
the other thing that I was amazed at is you don't pick their first album or the first time they won a Grammy or the first you pick like a seminal event, like the Willie Nelson album you picked. That's his 18th album.
Yeah.
So to your point about, he's done 4 albums. He spent Willie Nelson 18 albums in, and he's putting something like this out. And I love the liner notes because you're so matter of fact, where it's like, they didn't want to release it because it was about a guy killing somebody, and
they hated it. And I'm always looking for these, like, what can I hang my hat on? Not only is it's like I love the albums that everything's different for the artist afterwards, or albums that didn't maybe do that well, but ended up like kind of opening up a whole genre. And I love the story about Willie Nelson, who was sort of like a country, like easy listening shill, and then goes off to Texas. I mean, he was already famous, but nobody expected him to throw this like really personal oddball album. And I just thought, like, in my era, with indie rock, people were like, oh, I cut this album in my kitchen with my friends.
Yeah.
And you read about Willie and you're like, yeah, Willie did that in the 70s, you know,
50 years ago.
50 years ago. No
he
one
made
cared
8
about
albums in his kitchen. Move along.
Yeah. Nobody
In
liked
one
that.
night.
You know, and he's an icon today, I think, because he took that insane risk. You know, and then you listen to the album and it's jaw-droppingly good. You know, and it's fun. I love that. That was another one that I really fell in love with on vinyl. And you know, that's one of those albums I put on. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be that nerd. I have to move my chair to the middle of my speakers.
You do. You really do.
I've gone over.
Really
I didn't know you've gone over the edge.
I also like that you included a Love Supreme with Coltrane.
Oh, yeah.
That is just a phenomenal album. I mean, all his stuff is just really, really good. I had a bit of a Coltrane obsession for a while, and between that and, you know, My Favorite Things and just Blue Train and all this stuff, and I like that there's a Philly connection with him.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
I loved Nina Simone being in there.
Yeah, Nina Simone, such an incredible story. Also a Philly connection, not a positive one, but that one was fun. I think that's the one where I found, you know, that she had played on the Jersey Shore, you know, after getting denied going to the Curtis Institute. I dug quite a bit out of that bar that she was at. You know, there's some of these bars you just wish they were still there, right? And it actually survived, I think, up into the 80s. But there's fun stuff for her. A Love Supreme, what a great album. That's one of the albums, you know, that's one of the albums that I'm getting away with on this, because Volume 1, you got to do Miles Davis Kind of Blue, which I always feel is like Baby's first jazz album.
Absolutely.
Girls when you bring it home.
And you either like it or you don't. I mean,
yeah, and you either like it or you don't, but it's like so standard. And then the Coltrane is like really something else. Mm-hmm. And it's always my hope to, you know, somebody's going to buy that album and put it on and be like, huh. And then they're going to put it on the second time and be like, wow, okay, now I'm into jazz.
Right.
And then you find Charlie Parker, and you're right where you need to be. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
The next one. I really like that you had Dick Dale in there.
Yeah.
And in the liner notes, you note that the way he plays guitar was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And that other people who you think are the greatest guitarists basically just stole what he was doing or learned how to play like him and made it better. You know, they improvised beyond him, which is really kind of fascinating to me with the whole, you like this guy, well, go see this guy and this guy and this guy, and here's where it started, and it kind of runs its course. Yeah, it's fascinating.
I love you know, I kind of read the books when, you know, if I think something's interesting and I didn't know it, I'm like, wow, other people are going to think this is interesting. So I love that you saw that and you love it, because I saw it too. I did not know that about Dick Dale before writing this book. I didn't know that he was right. His father was North African. He was grew up learning those beats, and that's where surf comes from. I mean, come on. I mean, how many music magazines have I read, and no one's ever told me that?
that it's not American music. You've taken it from somewhere else.
Yeah, it's not American music, but it is so American. And
the drum beats are from somewhere else. Yeah, you moved it to California.
Yeah. That's okay, because that's America. Everything comes from somewhere else.
Absolutely. I love that album. I felt like I had to put in a surfer album, and I really just was like, well, I'll put in the OG surfer album. A lot of people complain because it's surfer in the beginning and then side B is kind of boilerplate stuff, but the vibe is still there. So it's just, and it's such a seminal album.
It's great. My surprise in there was Pavement.
Oh,
I was oh my God. I love Pavement. They were so great. That's good great. Surprise, definitely. And right after Metallica in the book. So that was good for me.
The Pavement is another one. Pavement's sort of exactly my era. In fact, I had a cooler friend, and she dragged me to a Pavement show. I never heard of them, saw them live, you know, with like 200 people back when it was, you know, it was probably 1994, something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
And then actually writing this book and kind of hunting around. I mean, I listened to them, but hunting around, they're amazing, right? I mean, looking back, they were big then, but looking back, you know, it's funny because like Nirvana, we all knew they were big when they were big. And it's like Pavement.
Put my Nirvana shirt on.
Yeah. We knew, we kind of knew, but Pavement, we did know they were very popular, but never at the level of like Nirvana. And then you go back and you're like, these guys, that album, it's a perfect album. It's really,
it was that college radio level of stuff. They never got almost to, I don't know what you guys had back east, the K-Rock here in LA. Yeah. They never got to that.
And they never got
so
to
they
that.
just lived on college radio.
Yeah. Right. And they got big, and I think it grew over time as people realized how quality those albums are. But when you go back and listen to them, and especially when you put them in like chronological order with what else was going on, I mean, they're like up here, and they're still perfect albums. And what's so funny is you go back and listen to something like Pavement, and you're like, it could come, if I heard this, if some friend of mine gave me a Spotify list with this and said, this just came out, you'd be like, oh, okay, this just came out. You know, it's still so vibrant and so contemporary.
You'd be downloading them on Bandcamp. Like,
they'd be huge.
And what you write in the liner notes, that it's the slacker era in all its introspective, anti-establishment Gen X glory. Where you're like, oh, we're not holding.
They were.
That's what they are. That's just what they are. Oh, and you made a cocktail with Kirschwasser, which is great.
Yeah. Oh, God. And that's such a great cocktail, too.
That reminds me. There was on the Nothing Else Matters cocktail.
Yes.
You talked about this 1 ounce of Kummel?
Yeah.
Kummel. I had never heard of that.
Ask Mike about it. Ask Mike.
So my grandmother was German. And instead of giving you a shot of Irish whiskey or a shot of this or a shot of whatever, she would give my mother a shot of Kummel as the cure for everything. And it's distilled caraway seeds.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things where it's like family recipe. We make this, we do this. Sometimes it's caraway seeds. Sometimes it's caraway seeds and a bunch of other stuff, other botanicals. You know, who knows what's in it. And I've been buying for my mother bottles from Master of Malt of Kummel and having it shipped because you can't really get good Kummel in the U.S.
No. Yeah.
And she'll get a bottle and she'll be like, not knowing, like, I had this shipped from overseas. And then every once in a while you get her a bottle and she'll be like, that was the best Kummel I've ever had. That was fantastic. and one of the things they'll make a drink that has Kummel and they'll throw a piece of corned beef in it, like the warm and healing, because it tastes like a little bit like rye bread.
And just drink it.
So it gives you like a corned beef special. It gives you a little bit of a flavor to it.
Oh,
so they're kind of like, well, we grill a piece of corned beef and we throw it in the bottom of the glass because, well, we just get a bit of food in there, like jerky kind of thing. Because it's a rye bread. You know,
I love it. It's like a pickleback, but with meat.
I was going to say, you get a pickle with that? Can I get a pickleback?
Who needs an egg behind the bar? Who needs a
No, we may be onto something here. We may be onto something here with the pickle, the mustard, the corned beef, and the Kummel.
It's a sandwich.
We can make a cocktail here. We can do this.
I don't know that anyone would want a second one, but maybe they'd want the first.
You don't know. I mean, if you get it right, it could be really good.
I had never heard of this before.
It's good stuff.
I need to find this.
To me, it proves the valuable point that given enough time and something laying around, you will figure out how to distill it. Right. Got all these caraway seeds. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, there's this really annoying seed. We're gonna get the essential oils out of it and distill it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right? It's all agricultural, right? So if you weren't using it, you were going to throw it away. If you weren't going to throw it away,
that's right.
No waste.
Do something else with it.
No waste.
That's right.
It's all happy accidents as far as I'm concerned.
So like making plum brandy in some of these countries where they go and they make all their stuff and like doesn't go to waste.
It is really delicious and it makes a fairly the Germans drink it quite a bit still. They make martinis with it.
Wow.
It's really oily, right? Because it's made from the seed. It has this incredible kind of mouthfeel on it, and I love it in cocktails. And I think hopefully people use it more. I mean, it's a little weird to throw in here, but it's also, but also the point is that
I'm buying
song is so weird. That how weird is it that one of the greatest metal songs of all time is this like waltz beat ballad? You know, and so I mean, the song is weird. The Metallica album's fun because actually Metallica, hats off to them because, you know, there's all kinds of celebrity liquor and, you know, everybody wants to like basically just put their name on a mezcal bottle. They don't know anything about it, blah, blah. But Metallica has Black and Whiskey, which was developed by David Pickerel. David Pickerel sadly passed away a few years ago, but Dave really is responsible for bringing bourbon itself back. He recreated Maker's Mark as the American bourbon. And if we remember back into the bad old days, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, people did not drink bourbon, and Maker's Mark really brought it back in the same way that Hendrix brought gin back. David was a big presence in American cocktailing, and somehow through their genius, I guess, Metallica decided to find the best guy for the job. And Black and Whiskey is really one of the best celebrity products on the market. I got it just out of curiosity. I was like, Metallica has a bourbon. Everybody has something bad, but I'm gonna try this album and see if it works. And then I got it, and I was like, Black and Whiskey is fantastic. The gimmick is they play Metallica at the barrel
to anger the whiskey,
like deepen it into
sonic waves.
Into the sonic waves. But the kind of story which we can't really believe is more than made up for by the fact that the mash bill is David Pickerel and the juice is just really good.
And now the master distiller is Rob Dietrich, who was the master distiller at Stranahan's.
Okay.
So after Pickerel passed away, they needed someone else. So Rob went over there, and Rob's got this musical background. Okay. And so now he's running the show. So it's not a bad whiskey at all.
No, it's not.
You know what I would like to have seen is one of the ingredients in your stuff. That scapegrace gin, Ange.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen this one? It's pink till you put the tonic in, and then it goes black in front of you.
Yeah, it's from New Zealand. What is
from New Zealand?
What is that one ingredient? Because now I've been seeing it everywhere.
It's a flower. It's a pea something or other. And
and when it turns purple though.
Yeah, and when it's by itself, it's pink.
Yes.
And as soon as you put something into it, it goes like a deep purple or black. It turns a color.
Yes.
Where on a bar, that would be a fascinating thing to watch. Where here's your drink, drop a tonic, goes completely black.
Cool. I think I do use butterfly pea powder.
That's it. Butterfly pea. That was it.
In the beginning of the book for the Foxy Hendrix.
Yeah.
But so you can either go buy that what's that gin, the purple gin, Empress, Empress, or you just use those butterfly pods, and boom, you just get purple.
Yeah. It's fun.
Some in our freezer.
It's fun.
It's very
totally fun.
It's like
speaking of fun, let's talk about the other part of this whole this crazy book game thing. The game.
Yeah.
Booze and Vinyl, the game. Talk about that.
So crazy. The press says, games are really hot. We want to do a game with Booze and Vinyl.
Family game night.
What would that possibly look like? And they came up with a memory card matching game. And this was fascinating because this actually was done basically before the manuscript for 2 was done. So I was already thinking about this game in at the same time they were producing Volume 2. And it's actually a combination of both books, which is really fun. And it actually let me think more about like the overall arc of the music and how the 2 books work together. So it was actually super, super helpful in that way. And also, they just knocked it out of the park again. It's got a cute little booklet. We wrote a special booklet for this, which is basically, some additional information and stuff that's in the other books, but a little bit different. They did a really cute booklet. And then, Josh, the graphic designer, he's just knocks it out of the park with the graphic design. So it's so graphic design heavy. I was worried. Like, okay, people are not going to want to remember an album and then remember a drink. That's just not going to happen. But because it's so graphic design heavy, it's all just visual. So you can remember it if you want to and learn about songs or albums or whatever. But also you can just visually eye it up and you're going to remember. So I'm super excited about this. I've played it, with my girlfriend, but I haven't played it with a group of people yet, which I hope to do next week.
In a week.
Yeah, in a week.
I have to practice.
Yes.
I like the back of the book. You can kind of create your own pairings, and there's like notes area, so you can fill in the album, the artist, the cocktail, and the notes. And so we're used to this stuff with whiskey tasting notes, and kind of creating your own and keeping it to go back to. It's awesome. And the crash course in cocktailing. It's perfect. This little book alone is pretty cool.
Yeah,
not forget
fun.
the game
I mean,
format.
you could take it camping with you, or take it across country and play it, and you'll have a little.
It's portable.
A little crib.
Absolutely.
And I try to.
Hey, Mike, what's your feeling on camping, Mike?
Well, camping is fantastic as long as there's at least 3 stars to the hotel. Any less than that, I feel I'm roughing it at 3 stars.
No, Mike is like, we've evolved. We have air conditioning and we have beds and we have.
I don't need to live outdoors.
So you need
I do enjoy a patio, a chimenea, and a cigar. That's camping to me.
Hey, I landed on the Bruce Springsteen in New Jersey. I like it. So you get some Laird's Applejack and a little bit of granulated sugar and some Angostura bitters. So it's basically like an Applejack, like old fashioned, right?
Yeah, fantastic drink. Real old too, very old drink.
Ingredients. 3 ingredients.
I like it. I think I got some Laird's.
Again, 3 ingredients. So many of these cocktails are just like they're these stools of 3-legged stools of flavor that are really quite simple, and people have the stuff at home sometimes, or a lot of times. And Applejack is quite inexpensive as far as liquor liquor goes. So
you got to get the Bond, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's hard to find, though. That's kind of hard to find.
I just need you to explain the Rock Lobster Bloody Mary for the beef. That is not 3 ingredients.
No.
It's 12 ingredients with lobster as a garnish.
I got one thing to say to that.
I don't have lobster laying around the house to garnish things.
All I can say is motion in the ocean.
We had to do that for some fun effect. It's funny in the other cocktail books that I've done. A lot of people back in the day, they don't really consider the Bloody Mary necessarily a cocktail. It's sort of like a bunch of amalgam and it's kind of a dump. And they prefer fresh tomato juice and that kind of stuff. But this Bloody Mary is pretty delicious. It's fairly I think you can get your way to a restaurant level Bloody Mary here, which I'm sort of passionate about Bloody Marys. I do love them. And then it was Rock Lobster, so obviously we just had to have a
why not
claw on there.
Now it's
one of the funnest bands of all time.
That song is starting to play in my head right now.
What's really funny is during the photo shoot for that, we were basically like, how do we Grubhub a lobster claw? Who can we order from that would send us a lobster claw over?
Boom.
Oof, what do you need?
That took us a couple of days. Actually, one of the photography assistants, I think, went to Reading Terminal Market and begged a lobster claw off one of the.
There you go.
Back to the design of the book. I swear, every page, every album, it's like its own photo shoot. It's its own story.
A lot of work.
It's amazing. I mean, you said you were holed up in a hotel for a while. I can't conceive of just doing each of these cocktail pictures.
They're amazing.
It's crazy.
They're amazing. I mean, we're, and the speed with which they work, it's all planned in advance, right? So I basically kind of send a manuscript over that's like highlighted, which with the photographer's always looking for what has color. Things have to be equidistant in the book. What has color? What has interest? What's really fun? What tells a story? What can we do some background with? So it's all basically in the notes, and then they just show up and shoot the dang thing. And it's phenomenal to watch these pros pull these photos together in that amount of time. But then above and beyond, Josh, goes through and there's a number of albums in here where the font that he's using is the font from, you're not seeing the cover art, but the font's from the cover art.
Right.
These are, especially like something like, not in this book, but in volume 1, the Rolling Stones have their own font. And, in the which I didn't even know. And the graphic designer finds the font, and then that section is in that font. And, just the depth of the detail on these books. And
where you should have done this? At the
say?
Chateau Marmont.
Yeah, right.
The Chateau
That
Marmont.
was, I mean, you can have like ghost stories.
Yeah, after you trash the room,
That's right.
After wandering the halls.
Yeah.
After the TV goes out the window.
Yeah.
I'm really old, so I
Yes,
actually
you are.
get a daily newspaper.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm that guy who has it delivered, and I walk down in my socks and sandals to pick it up every day because
He's like,
I'm not that guy.
I love the texture. I love the feel. I love everything. And when this book came out, I love the feel of the pages, the quality of the paper, the textured visuals. Like you're feeling what's in the book. And then your descriptions are so dynamic of the music. They're so deep into the research. And you can tell not only do you love cocktails, but you really love the music. And like it really comes across on every page you go through. Because like you said, they changed the font. They recenter the picture. They change the color of the next page. They do something else. It's so well crafted that it really picks up on how well written it is. It's really just great. It really is.
Well, thank you so much. I feel like for me, I just try to do it, and the art is so great, the music is so great that I just try to get out of the way and really give people. I get 4 sentences basically to tell people why this album will change their life, right? So I'm always like looking for like, what can I say that gets people hooked? Where they're just like they're at least going to go to Spotify and listen to it. That's the first step, and then maybe they'll fall in love with it. And it really is a passion project. I feel so incredibly lucky. The book is obviously kind of dying out as a thing. It's an analog thing, as we mentioned. And I get to, hand in these manuscripts. But it's a bit like making a movie where I hand in the manuscript and then, wow, they make this incredible.
This is what happened.
And the love, the love goes all the way down. Josh, who's the designer on it, loves vinyl. He loves music. Jason Varney, who's the photographer, loves vinyl. So during the shoot, we have a turntable and people are bringing in their vinyl. These are people that just like really love this, and it just makes all the difference in the world. Instead of making, another corporate cocktail book, this thing is like, you can't buy this amount of graphic design hours.
No.
For me,
this is somebody who's like up late and doing it because they're obsessive with it.
Yeah. For me, the centerfold is 112 and 113. That's the money shot to me. That's the best picture in the whole book.
112 and 113. Oh, Billy Joel.
That's you have your snack that you put in there, your Italian aperitivo plate.
Shot.
Yeah.
And they got the Campari in the background. They got a drink. They have a little old-timey radio.
That's nice.
This is the kind of quality that goes into the book where you're like,
the
checkerboard tablecloth.
A little piece of bread that's been toasted, a little bit of the ends a little burnt. They've every attention to details there.
Oh,
it's just so well crafted.
It is
as the rest of the book is.
It's incredible because people are not making books like this anymore. This is incredibly expensive to produce something like this. So I always feel just like incredibly lucky to be part of the project and to see this kind of stuff come together live. And what I love about it is the songs tells this story, and then we get to recreate this story with like a drink, and it's such a
my Italian restaurant right there.
Yeah, it's really fun. I really love the I got away with putting Elvis Costello in this, which is one of like the great smart snarky albums of all time, and getting a really fun sandwich in that one. So yeah, there's some really fun some fun layouts, some fun spreads, and that's stuff that we do. Like we just do it all from spreadsheet and kind of show up. And we're like, all right, we're gonna shoot Billy Joel this morning. Who's got the bread?
Sarcones.
Who's got the lobster claw? Somebody have the lobster claw in their purse?
Well, the beauty of vinyl in so many ways is the artwork.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And this book and the previous one really is kind of a manifestation of that. It's the same feel. You're picking this up, you're turning the pages and you're seeing representations of all of these albums right there in front of you. It's you can't put it down. It's like you want to hold this while you're listening to the record or while you're having this cocktail. It's just, I love the back of the baseball card stuff that Mike keeps talking about. On every page, you've got all these little interesting factoids about I just turned to Britney Spears, and it's great. I mean, you could do one of baseball. You could do a baseball card book like this. That'd be fun. So
baseball alcohol? I don't think that's something that mixes. I don't know.
The steroid. We can leave out the steroid era.
Come on, Mike, you're a Phillies fan. There's a lot of drinking.
No,
wearing a Red Sox hat.
They just had a big thing with David Ortiz is the only player, Boston Red Sox, the only player going to the Hall of Fame this year, and he said the two things that got me to the Hall of Fame were the bench press and whiskey. And he said,
he's a Caribbean guy.
I learned how to do a bench press. It gave me all my power, gave me all my strength, and I like whiskey. Whiskey's really good. The note you have on 147, where on the song "How Many More Years" features the first distorted power chord.
Yeah,
that kind of like obscure, like nobody would have known that. Yeah. Like that's the first time, really. Nope. So this is so many years ago, and this is the first time somebody threw it. And now you got to look up Willie Johnson. And guitar split. Yeah. Who's Willie Johnson? I got to go to the next thing. Out to Wikipedia. Let me Google this guy. see what happens next.
Lost it.
I love the back of the book too. You've got just after that, Mike. Chapter 5, the merch table. Right?
Oh, yeah, the merch table.
That's so great. The lessons, a lesson in making great drinks. And I love that picture, by the way, of the 1960s, 50s. How to batch drinks for a party.
Yeah.
Recipes for honey syrup and grenadine. Setting up a home bar.
Yeah,
it's simple.
Yeah,
in a very simple way. It's presented to people, and then the part that I love the most is the record store listing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so great.
Yeah,
that is just awesome. Seeing all those stores all listed in one page.
That was something we did at the very end. We had gone across the country in 2018, and it was like I really wanted to shout out to because it's so tactile, right? I mean. The vinyl people are still going to record stores, so the chain just keeps going, and it's like, oh well, let's put that in there. We had to comb through that list quite a few times, make sure that everybody was still open.
Still around. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And even your bibliography in the back is fun too.
Yeah, put in a few.
It's great.
And it gives you the 12 bottles.
Yep.
And like the 12 tools, and that's all you need. Just
pretty much.
It's not overpowering. Start with this, branch out, see what happens next. But
a record collection, right? You got to start with 4 or 5,
exactly.
and then
start with something.
You build.
Get the turntable and maybe one speaker. Figure out what you need. Maybe a second speaker. See what happens.
Mono,
next.
stereo.
Exactly. Turntable.
I got the hi-fi. That was a really good cocktail, by the way.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I really liked it.
Both were just awesome. Awesome.
I had two. I Oaxacan, twice.
Yeah, I noticed you stopped talking. I wonder if you walked yourself out the door.
I'm done.
I finished. He might be 3 in.
Two.
So, is there, looking in the future, is there a volume 3?
I can tell you guys there is a volume 3.
Shocking.
Awesome.
Harry Chapin, man. Come on, throw some people I know.
Harry Chapin.
Van Halen. Let's all throw out names.
It's a little bit of a curveball because what we're going to do is all entirely holiday.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Christmas, I assume.
All different holidays?
Yeah. So all of the favorite artists that that have done a holiday album. It's going to be shorter. It's going to be a smaller book.
But just the Christmas holiday or all holidays?
It's just Christmas. It's been,
Christmas. Okay.
Come on, Mike. There's only one holiday that makes money.
Yeah,
Christmas.
Christmas
holiday. Something else out?
It could be. Yeah, it could. It would be a fun. In fact, that did come across that maybe we want to do a holiday book. But it's a Christmas book of Christmas albums. It's really fun because it's like 3. There might be a 3 that's just straight up another one of these someday. But somebody had the idea, we were batting forth ideas. What would be really fun? So it's going to be smaller. It's about half the size, we think at this point. But it's already really fun. It's it's such a warm, fuzzy time. Christmas music is contentious. Obviously, there's a lot of dreck. Some people love it. Some people hate it. It's a thing. It's a thing. It's a mood.
You know what? You throw Vince Guaraldi in there, you got to win.
It's in there.
You can't not.
So Bing Crosby David Bowie, Little Drummer Boy.
Yeah.
What kind of weird ass cocktail do you have for that?
One of the great.
Ziggy Stardust and Father Flanagan. Let's see what happens.
You might have to have like some glitter. And
There's a lot of rimming on the glass.
yeah, sugar rim and some glitter. So that will be a fun one. I think it's a good idea. I want to make it just a great holiday winter cocktail book, and then it'll also be booze vinyl. But I want to make that book, is going to make sure that you're going to have good holiday drinks in there, and you're going to learn your toddies to your
a glug.
I told bros your glug. Yeah, exactly.
You gotta do a glug. Is there an ABBA Christmas album?
Seasonal holiday beers that come out too.
Blessedly, there is no ABBA Christmas album.
There's no ABBA Christmas album? Or AHA. Does AHA have a Christmas album?
No. I mean, what's funny is some of those albums just are Christmas albums, right? They just don't have the lyrics. Man.
Yeah, Religion has one.
Yeah.
Use those guys.
Oh yeah. I mean, the number of funny Christmas albums. I mean, I've been starting to sift through it, and pretty brutal.
It's endless. It's brutal and endless. Starting with Mariah Carey and going on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you got to get in your NSYNCs and your Boys to Men and your
Bruce Springsteen.
You gotta have Springsteen.
Really?
I know.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
Highlights like Dylan. Dylan came out with a Christmas album. I think
Dylan,
like
same
2016, 2018.
Really?
It's fantastic.
You throw in the Hanukkah song in there. You got to throw the Hanukkah song in
Yeah.
there. Little Adam Sandler. It involves a drink in a paper bag, maybe in a parking lot.
Manischewitz. A little Manischewitz.
He's on a few. He actually ended up on it's Adam Sandler, right? I think he actually ended up on a few duets on a few Christmas albums.
Yeah.
For a number of his funny songs.
Did the Beastie Boys ever do like a holiday album?
No,
that would be
a
fun.
good one. That's a good one. But Julio did, and it's actually fantastic.
You gotta include Dominic the Christmas Donkey.
Yes,
Dominic the Christmas Donkey.
That is a truly odd song. Jiggity jig.
Yeah, the Gene Autry. It's got
Gene Autry. Yep.
Gene Autry. Merle Ives, Who Hated Children.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting album an interesting book to kind of balance it out between like all the famous, albums that have come out. Which if you just did those in the 90s, the book would be pretty monotonous because a lot of it's very similar. And then like how many crooners do you put in,
Perry Como.
Oh.
Perry Como, yeah.
So there's going to be a relaxed section and then a comatose section.
That would be the Perry Como would be the comatose section. Yes.
Yeah, you're passed out under the tree. Here's the mood.
People on a ventilator. Perry Como.
Hey,
by the way, I'd like to do the copy for this, the advertising copy. Are you on a ventilator?
You're on a ventilator. You think you will be?
The Merv Griffin Christmas album was always a pleasant one too.
Merv Griffin.
Hey, Mike, what do you think about a stout flip? I think you got me drooling here.
Oh yeah, stout flip's fantastic.
3 ounces of stout, 3 ounces of stout beer, 2 ounces of rum, half an ounce of simple syrup, 2 dashes of Angostura, and some nutmeg.
It's so good.
Ooh.
Oh,
you know what I liked in the book, page 19, the Sex Pistols one, Get Pissed.
Oh yeah,
that's a great.
Whiskey,
I almost made that.
Cider, check. Stout,
yeah, if I had cider,
check.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great album too, so that helps.
That's a hark back to like college days when you're like, well, you have some beer and you have some cider. You might as well add some whiskey under there to make sure you get there.
Check,
it really
check,
is
check.
funny how
check.
Yeah. It's funny how some of this stuff, like you said earlier, is coming back.
Yeah.
And we're not looking down on it like we did a few years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, good example. I keep seeing Midori everywhere. When I was younger,
oh my god, yeah, my mom's favorite.
People drink Midori sours and like clubs, and it like glowed in the black light while we're like instance music, And people didn't touch it for the last 15 years, and now you see, it in magazines. Like, oh, Midori, it's back.
And what's funny is people didn't touch it, but it's still been sold.
Yeah,
it's still being made.
Oh, for
all
sure.
of these Southern Comfort, Midori, Amaretto, they never stopped making this stuff.
The Drambuie, Blue Curacao, all the colorful drinks, everything that people didn't want anymore, it's still out somewhere.
Yeah,
That's the blue one.
They never went away. They just went away in the media, you know, and then in the hip, the thing that we were doing. And there's a fine line between, wanting to get away from stuff. There's a fine line between learning historical drinks and doing things right and just being elitist, So it's always nice to actually see those drinks come back in a way, because why not? I mean, it's your choice whether or not to drink it or not, but we don't have to like downplay it or pretend that it's worse than. Let's just be honest really quick, and I'll ruin my career right now by saying Campari is red dye mixed with sugar, sold for 5 times, 15 times what it sells for in Italy. It's not any kind of like craft product, right? So why does Campari get a pass and we have poo-pooed Midori? It's it's the same. It's the same thing.
And a lot of these names we mentioned, the number one part of the product is sugar.
Yeah,
they're all sugar. They're all just sugar.
And but to their benefit, I mean, one of the fun things about a Campari or a Midori is you don't have to actually add any granulated sugar to your drink.
It's already there.
It's sugar.
You use a half ounce of it, and you're like, bam, bam, I have my flavor. So I actually been playing with Midori a little bit, recently, just to be silly. You go in the liquor store and you're like, why not? Let's get some Campari and Midori, and it's just another liquor in the arsenal. We spent a lot of years like using maraschino liqueur, a lot of years using elderflower liqueur, which is not really anything traditional, but it's delicious and it works. It got to the point where people were calling it bartender ketchup, because you could kind of fix it.
You went in everything.
With elderflower liqueur. And, it's nice to just see people, it's just part of the palate. I like to think of like cocktails now, sort of like, let's say you have a big keyboard and each one of these liquors is, one of the notes. And like, how are you going to play in the glass? What does it sound like?
And I'm glad to hear that, because right next to the bottle of Southern Comfort, I've got a bottle of Blur Curacao and a bottle of Midori. I don't know why they're there, but I do. I do, because most of what I drink, I just drink straight Scotch and bourbon and whatever. Yeah. So I don't go in that cabinet ever.
Right. So those liquors just sit there until you have like
been there for a long time. And I couldn't tell you when I got them or who gave them to me or how they got there. But
I think if you think of
reason for me to use them, this is great.
If you think of them as a substitute for sugar in a drink,
simple syrup,
right? It's simple. It's a different version of simple syrup.
Yeah.
That then you change your old fashioned completely by putting Midori in it instead, right? For instance,
I mean, let's face it, I always feel like, I'm a pretty lazy bartender. I mean, I make a lot of drinks, but at home, I'm like, I don't really want to make a simple syrup. What can I use?
In the same way.
So I don't have to shake some sugar, So
Aunt Jemima's in the fridge. Use all of that.
I got maple syrup back here somewhere.
I'll use honey instead. I'll throw honey in there.
Yeah.
Honey, it's there.
Jam, whatever. Little ice cream, whatever you got.
Sure. It's
sherbet.
very simple.
I noticed sherbet in a number of the cocktails.
Yeah.
Sherbet's
fun. That was a big thing for a while. People forget it, and even I forget it. But
I love how Andre, you said earlier, you threw it out and it kind of went by us. You said the 3-legged stool of cocktails, right?
Yeah.
It's so true, right? Yeah. Sweet, sour, and spirit, and boom, you got a cocktail. Yeah. Whatever those three you choose, you probably are going to not screw it up too much.
Yeah, it's true. And I always like to give, in all the books, I sort of give people some ratios in the back. I'm always like, there's 2, 1, 1/4 or whatever, 2 or 1/2, 3/4, 1/4. You can carve it up however you want when you're thinking about base spirit, modifier, and either acid or sugar. Yeah, and I'm always trying to, give people these ratios, however sophisticated you want to be. If you look at most drinks, they're broken down into, in the past, there were a lot of just equal parts, 3 equal parts. And then people started laddering. But there's all kinds of like tricks. And it's like professional bartenders have these same ratios in their minds when, you go to one of these bars and they say, it sounds so, me too. When it first started happening, I was like, these guys are geniuses. Because they would be like, what's the base spirit that you like? Do you like it acidic or blah, blah? And you're like, how are these people coming up with these drinks? Well, they just had very simple ratios that they were using.
Yeah.
If you tell them gin and sour, they just have like go-to. So once you kind of get in there. So I love, to give people the opportunity to just, the shelf is very scary in the beginning, right? You have to figure out what all these things taste like. You have to learn a bunch of cocktail history and all that. But pretty soon, it's like cooking. Pretty soon, you can just be like, there's no harm in getting, that Jägermeister down with some gin and putting those two things together in some kind of ratio, and then adding a third thing and seeing if it works.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it will, and it'll be more interesting. And you'll, half the time you'll be like, dang, I'm fancy. This is really good.
Why was I drinking this Jaeger straight? This was just dumb.
Yeah, I could have made a whole cocktail. I could have been a bartender.
Exactly.
So where can we get the game and the book? Where's it being sold?
The game and the book are being sold wherever books are sold. All the independents, of course, you can ask to have them order it. The book is going out to a number of like the larger kind of independents that are left, plus stuff like Barnes & Noble, and of course, always Amazon. So always available. You can always go to, there is a boozeandvinyl.com. The only book that I'll ever do that has its own,
website.
But there's tour information out there about that. There's a little bit of a community out there. You can follow stuff on Instagram. So the boozeandvinyl.com is live and happening. And then I'm going physically across the country. So I'll be at 8 cities from now until June. So people can, join us at listening parties across the United States too, live this year. So pretty exciting, pretty fun.
Excellent. We cannot thank you enough for coming in, and we love the first one. We love all your books, and we love talking cocktails with you. I mean, you have such an interesting attitude about cocktail drinking in America today, and maybe worldwide, I guess. It's fun. It's just fun to talk cocktails and fun to talk music. So we thank you again for coming in. Booze and Vinyl number 2 is out. It comes out this week, right?
Comes out April 18th, April 19th.
April 18th, which is in a couple of days, right? Yep. Next week.
If you pre-order. Yep.
If you pre-order now, correct?
What'd you say?
And the tour kicks off on Record Store Day, April 21st?
Tour kicks off on Thursday. So that Friday then is Record Store Day. So the book releases like 4 days before Record Store Day. Good to put that plug in there too. It is Record Store Day coming up at the end of next week on Saturday. There'll be a lot of great vinyl. Booze and Vinyl is being sold at a lot of record stores across the United States. And I do just want to say thank you for you guys for having me on. I love coming on. I think I came on last time kind of when my last book came out. And this is pretty much my first interview on this book. And I value your guys' opinion because you're always fun to talk to, and cocktails and music. So it's really, really enjoyable for me.
It's a good time, man. It's a damn good time.
It's a good time. I'm really honored that you had me on again.
Well, thanks, Andre. Support your local bookstore. Support your local record store.
And your local bars.
Please. Yes.
And your local bars.
Get some cocktails.
And your local barware and spirit shops, please.
And thanks again for coming on, Andre.
Thank you so
much. Thanks, Andre.
Thanks for having me. See you guys soon.
Are you leaving, or are you going to hang around for a little bit?
I can hang around for a little bit.
Okay. Should we just roll the end credits? What do you think?
Yeah, roll the end credits and then take us off live.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's do that. All right, folks. Andre, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night from BoozeDancing.
So we came to a tidy 2 hours. That was quick.
Not done yet. Hold on.